Before dawn in Isfahan, a 32-year-old man is led to the gallows. He holds a master's degree in civil engineering. For a while, he drove a taxi. The state says he was something else entirely. A Mossad operative who photographed targets across the city for payments of about €1,000, trained abroad, fluent in Hebrew. By sunrise, he is dead. His conviction, built on a confession his family says was pulled out of him during months in solitary confinement. The Islamic Republic calls this a victory against the spies who gutted it from the inside. And here's the uncomfortable part of that claim. The men Iran is hanging at dawn are not the men who beat it. Because the operation that humiliated Iran didn't run on taxi drivers. It ran on a secret army Israel built inside Iran's own borders. And by Israel's own account, that army never left. What the executioners can reach and what actually defeated Iran are two very different things. This is the story of how completely Israel got inside, and why the regime is answering that failure by hanging the people who had nothing to do with it. Before we get into it, the drone factory the Mossad built near Tehran, the law that turned a confession into an automatic death sentence, who is actually filling Iran's gallows, and the chilling reason that peace abroad may mean more executions at home. The factory in Shahr-e Ray. Start with the wound, because nothing else makes sense without it. According to Israeli security officials, the strikes on Iran didn't begin in the sky. They began on the ground, months earlier, with the Mossad quietly building a drone base inside Iran. Think about what that takes. Parts for armed drones smuggled in through suitcases, trucks, and oil tankers, then put together on Iranian soil. Flat-pack weaponry, assembled in a safe house. Precision missiles were pre-positioned near Iran's air defense sites and waited there, patient, until the night of the strike, when operatives pulled them from hiding and fired at point-blank range to blind Iran's radars from within. The cells running these weapons had been trained abroad, then slipped back in to direct local teams. On the night itself, drones staged near Tehran lifted off to strike a major missile base at Isfahan. That is why Iran's feared response landed so softly, only around 200 missiles in 4 ragged barrages, far fewer than Israel had braced for, because so many launchers were destroyed before they could ever fire. And if the method sounds familiar, it should. It's the same trick Ukraine pulled deep inside Russia weeks earlier, smuggling cheap drones in to burn strategic bombers on the ground. And this isn't only an Israeli boast, it's something Iran confirmed itself, by accident. After the strikes, Iranian investigators recovered the wreckage and put it on display. The remnants of Israeli-made spike missiles and a 3-story drone factory hidden in a building in Shahr-e Ray, just south of Tehran. By Iran's own evidence, the Mossad had assembled weapon systems inside Tehran itself. A foreign intelligence service ran a weapons plant in the suburbs of the capital, and the regime's own security forces never noticed until it was over. For a state that hangs people on the mere suspicion of espionage, that is a remarkable thing to have missed. An entire enemy assembly line, humming away in its own capital. The decapitation in real time. The penetration didn't stop at hardware. It reached the very top of Iran's command. Guided by spies and artificial intelligence, Israel paired human informants with machines that sifted mountains of data to map exactly where Iran's generals worked and where they spent their free time. Then it killed them as the operation unfolded. Commanders and nuclear scientists eliminated in real time. The campaign climaxed on February 28, when a strike killed the supreme leader himself. His top security advisor, Ali Shamkhani, was killed the same day. None of this was improvised. Israeli officials say the groundwork ran for years, building on earlier waves of strikes that had already mapped exactly how brittle Iran's defenses were, so that by the time the main blow fell, the targeting was less discovery than rehearsal. And this method isn't new. The nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, killed in 2020 by a remote-operated weapon on the back of a truck. A drone strike at Kermanshah in 2022, another at Isfahan in 2023. Each one said the same thing a little louder. Nowhere in Iran is out of reach. The compromise that gutted the Islamic Republic was not at the taxi driver level. It was at the command level. The law that made a confession fatal. So how do you respond to a humiliation that total? If you're this regime, you change the law to make killing easier. In October 2025, Iran enacted a sweeping new statute making cooperation with Israel automatically punishable by death. Pair that with a vague accusation and a confession, and in Iran's revolutionary courts, the confession is very often the entire case, and the sentence essentially writes itself. Human rights monitors are blunt about what the death penalty has become here. A central tool of political oppression and repression. Not a justice system reaching a verdict. An instrument of fear, with a legal stamp on it. The dragnet feeding that instrument was enormous. In the first days after the strikes, the authorities said they had detained more than 700 people as alleged Israeli mercenaries, and stood up a new committee for what state media branded an intelligence jihad. scanning ordinary citizens' online activity for any trace of disloyalty. Iran's national police chief went on television with an offer to anyone who had helped the enemy: turn yourself in for the system's mercy, or learn the same lesson being delivered in the field. The record Gallows. And once the law was in place, the machine ran at full speed. The numbers are staggering. At least 1,639 people executed in 2025, a 68% jump in a single year, and the most Iran has hanged since 1989. For scale, that's up from about 975 the year before, with monitors documenting hundreds more they couldn't fully confirm. And only one country on Earth, China, executes more. The gallows weren't reserved for accused spies either. They also swallowed protesters from the mass uprising that had swept the country the winter before, the largest since 1979. Then it accelerated, at least 656 more in just the first 3 months of 2026, with rights groups warning that many more were carried out unseen during the country's internet blackout. Around 146 were executed during the war itself. Strip that down to a human rhythm. That's the pace for political prisoners alone at the spring peak, an average of 1 execution every 2 days, after trials held in secret. Picture the arithmetic of that from a single prison corridor: a cell emptied, refilled, and emptied again before the week is out, and you start to see why monitors describe the system less as a court than as a conveyor belt. The wrong people. Now ask the question that breaks the regime's story open. Who is actually dying on those gallows? Rights groups warn of a sharp rise in executions tied to political charges. Look at the names: a taxi driver in Isfahan, an aerospace engineering graduate, Kurdish and Baluch laborers, 84 Afghan nationals executed in a single year, the most women put to death in more than 2 decades. The monitoring group Henga counted at least 26 executions in April alone. Many were tried by video link, denied lawyers, convicted on confessions that rights groups say were extracted under torture. Take a few of the cases monitors have flagged. A Kurdish prisoner sentenced to death 3 separate times until a court finally made it stick. A man from the Yarsan religious minority, arrested and held for months with no access to a lawyer. Amnesty International calls these cases what they appear to be: arbitrary, and carried out without the regime ever showing the public real evidence. And the burden falls hardest on those with the least protection. 84 Afghan migrants were among those executed in a single year, and the number of women hanged climbed to its highest in more than 2 decades. These are the people a frightened system reaches for when it needs to look strong and has no one powerful in its cells. These are not the profiles of people who build drone factories or place precision missiles beside air defense radars. You do not bring down a national air defense network with a man who drives a cab for a living. The state is filling its gallows with the people it can catch, not the people who actually got inside. A manhunt that can't reach its target. And that is the contradiction at the center of all of this. The people who built the factory in Shahr-e Ray are not standing trial in Tehran. The network that smuggled the drones, the assets who fingered the generals, those are exactly the people the purge has not produced. Analysts have a plain read on why the dragnet looks the way it does. Hanging laborers helps deflect attention away from the higher-level officials who actually let Israel in. Because the unbearable question underneath all of it is how Israel got so high inside the system in the first place. And the most pointed evidence that the purge isn't working comes from the other side. The Mossad has said in public that it is not finished operating inside Iran. Its chief said the agency would be there, as it has been there until now. It's the streetlight problem. A man drops his keys in the dark and searches under the lamppost instead, not because the keys are there, but because the light is. Iran is hanging the people standing in the light, because the ones who matter are still in the dark and still moving. And there's a more uncomfortable implication buried in that. A penetration this deep, a drone plant in the suburbs, missiles tucked beside the radars, the location of the entire Air Force command handed over, is almost impossible to pull off without help from somewhere high inside the system itself. Every laborer hanged at dawn is one more body placed between that question and its answer. Why peace makes it worse. Here's the turn, and it's the darkest part of the whole story. You might assume the war was driving the executions, and that the June peace deal would slow them down. A source close to Iran's judiciary told the French newspaper Le Monde the opposite. The full quote is chilling. As long as the threat of an American attack hangs over the country, the execution machine will not be fully set in motion. But if the regime stabilizes, and that pressure lifts, the hangings accelerate. Which means the memorandum of understanding the world is calling progress may be precisely the thing that removes the brake. A regime that feels safe from outside has more freedom to settle scores at home. The ceasefire abroad could be the starting gun for the gallows inside, and the backlog is already waiting. Hundreds of people detained in the winter protests sit under threat of death sentences right now. A regime that no longer fears an American strike is a regime with the bandwidth, and the confidence to start clearing that list. It is a grim inversion of everything a peace deal is supposed to mean. For the world, the war is winding down. For the prisoner in the Iranian cell, the most dangerous moment may be the one that begins after the guns abroad go quiet. Closing questions. If a state cannot find the network that built a drone factory on its own soil, and answers that failure by hanging taxi drivers and day laborers, how much of its feared security apparatus is real control? And how much is theater for a frightened public? And the harder question, if the ceasefire the world is calling progress is the very thing that takes the brake off Iran's gallows, what does peace with this regime actually buy the people living under it? And does a deal that stabilizes the government carry any share of responsibility for the lives that stability frees it to take? Sign off. Our update continues. Stay tuned.